Writing good creative nonfiction often comes down to one core skill: taking two seemingly unconnected ideas and discovering how they relate. Structurally, one of the best ways to explore this is through a format called the braided essay. By the end of this tutorial, you will have everything you need to construct a fully formatted, structurally sound rough draft of your own braided essay. To get started, you just need a few basic tools: a word processor, a stack of index cards, one specific personal memory you want to explore, and a topic of factual research that relates to it. If this is your first time attempting this form, keep it simple. Limit yourself strictly to 2 narrative threads. Adding more right out of the gate is a quick way to overwhelm your structure. Taking 2 distinct narratives and weaving them together serves a precise purpose. It is a reliable, mechanical process for uncovering deeper emotional resonance and meaning in nonfiction writing. Start by locking in your primary thread. This should be a personal story or a memory that has been on your mind lately. For example, maybe you want to process the lingering anxiety you felt during the recent pandemic. Once you have that anchor, your second thread needs to provide a stark contrast. You can accomplish this by picking a diametrically opposed personal story or by selecting a topic of rigorous factual research. For instance, if your personal memory is a lighthearted night spent messing around on a historical construction of the cemetery where that tour took place, or if you are writing about watching relatives struggle with the modern fears of aging, you might contrast that by researching an ancient Sumerian myth about mortality. The secret to a successful pairing is choosing subjects that provide a strong emotional contrast on the surface, but actually share a hidden connection underneath. The most common trap for beginners is trying to weave these 2 narratives together as they write their very first draft. This almost always leads to creative paralysis. Instead, we are going to use the deliberate method. This means you will draft your 2 selected narratives as completely separate entities. Step 1 is to sit down and write out your personal story from start to finish. Do not worry about how the research or the second thread will fit into it right now. Just tell your story. Once that personal draft is done, stop. Step away from it entirely, switch gears, and begin processing your research. As you read through your sources, isolate the information. Write each fascinating historical fact or specific anecdote onto its own individual index card. This strict compartmentalization frees you to generate raw material without the pressure of forcing premature connections. Now that you have both sets of material, it's time to begin the actual weave. Lay out the completed draft of your personal essay. Take your stack of index cards and begin sliding those distinct research facts into the gaps between the paragraphs of your personal story. You're looking for spots in the personal narrative where a piece of factual research either fits naturally or creates an interesting, ironic contrast to what you just experienced. When you find a placement that works, type that specific piece of research directly into your main document. You are now creating the alternating segments of your essay. To visually separate these segments, use the industry standard formatting. Insert either a large blank space or 3 asterisks between the different threads. As you piece this together, you have to be ruthless. Be completely unafraid to discard sentences or entire paragraphs from your original draft if they no longer serve this new combined structure. The weave is essentially a structural editing process. By placing 2 totally unrelated facts in physical proximity to one another, you force the reader to see an entirely new context. When building these segments, you have to watch out for the information dump. This happens when you drop factual research right next to a personal story, but fail to give it a metaphorical purpose. To fix this, review your woven draft and specifically look for patterns. Find the conceptual links that connect your research to your lived experience. Once you identify that link, you must add at least one final section near the end of your essay. This is where your 2 threads explicitly merge to make sense of one another. This doesn't require a massive, life-altering epiphany. Some of the most effective and powerful insights in writing are incredibly small. One technique to solidify this merge is to use a leitmotif. Look back at the earlier pages of your essay and find a recurring image or phrase. Bring that specific image back in your final paragraph. Using that familiar visual as the closing note acts as a functional anchor for the entire piece. Nailing this final anchor is crucial. It elevates your work from a random collection of memories into a cohesive, intentional intellectual argument. If you follow these steps, you now possess a fully segmented, beautifully structured rough draft that tightly intertwines personal experience with factual research. This gives you a solid foundation for the next phase of the writing process, revision. That's when you can start experimenting with blurring the lines between sections rather than relying on those asterisks to do the work. Just remember to keep an eye on your calendar. It is very easy to let the messy, intuitive discovery process trick you into believing you have infinite time to finish. You don't. By using this deliberate, structured method, you allow yourself the space for creative discovery while maintaining the practical reality of producing finished work on a deadline.